I've always said the numbers don't lie. People do. Emotions do. But the math? That's the only honest thing left. My name is Caleb Morgan. I'm 42 years old, and I live in Westchester, New York. I used to be an IRS investigator. Now, I'm a forensic accountant for people who need to know where their money went and who try to hide it. I don't lose sleep over the messes I clean up. I don't form opinions. I work with facts. Except at home, where things had stopped adding up. My wife, Marla, has always lived in the abstract. Luxury art dealer, eyes for color and movement, the kind of person who spoke about aesthetics like they were sacred. She hosted gallery events that I pretended to care about, kept a Rolodex of billionaires who wore scarves in the summer, and knew how to pour just the right amount of champagne for someone to think they mattered. But lately, things had started to drift. She'd started hosting more pop-up shows, late-night affairs in Tribeca that didn't end until 2 or 3 in the morning. She bought new clothes almost weekly, and not just things for the gallery, high-end, runway stuff she never used to bother with. Gucci, not vintage. Cartier, not antique. She also started taking these quick trips, disappearing for a night or two, always with vague excuses. A collector in Miami, a potential donor in Chicago. She never used to travel alone. The first time I noticed the shift, she came back from San Francisco with no luggage. Claimed the airline lost it. But when I checked our Amex statement, there was no ticket charge, no luggage fee, no hotel. She hadn't even flown commercial. That's when the analyst in me clicked on. Quietly. No confrontation. No drama. I just did what I'm paid to do for others. At night, when she thought I was asleep, I'd sit in my home office and trace her steps. She wasn't careful. She didn't know I had access to her gallery's back-end financials, or that I'd written the contracts for her corporate partnerships and still had API access to the payment processors. I found discrepancies. Payments routed through an LLC that hadn't existed 6 months ago. Hotel charges in cities she never told me about. Car services, private, high-end, booked with her gallery card, but always after hours. She had opened a private checking account under her maiden name. That was the final nudge. I spent 3 nights building a full report. Cross-referenced IP addresses, matched mobile check-ins to travel patterns. I watched the spreadsheet populate itself with evidence. She was siphoning funds through the gallery's vendor account, rerouting them through a shell account, and withdrawing cash during trips that didn't align with any gallery business. I still hadn't confronted her. I couldn't. Not yet. I needed the full picture, the full crime scene mapped out before I made a move. The thing is, I've dealt with fraudsters before. White-collar criminals, slick liars who smiled in courtrooms and signed checks with the same hand they used to steal. But this, Marla, this wasn't just a lie. This was methodical. And that's what terrified me. It wasn't just infidelity. It was financial betrayal. A breach that went beyond marriage and straight into the foundation of everything I'd built. I looked at our 8-year-old son Jesse one night while he was asleep. His mouth open, arms wrapped around that ratty stuffed lion he's had since preschool. He was the only thing that still made sense. The only truth left in the house. And I made myself a promise. Whatever came next, Jesse would never see it coming. He would be protected, not just from the divorce I knew was now inevitable, but from the kind of woman his mother had chosen to become. It was Jesse's idea to go to the aquarium. They had just finished renovating the shark exhibit, floor-to-ceiling glass tanks with reef tunnels, and a new animatronic feeding simulation. He couldn't stop talking about it. Dad, they have a megalodon jaw. Like full size. You can walk through it. So we went. Just him and me, Saturday afternoon. I told Marla we were having a guy's weekend. She barely looked up from her phone. Said she had a late showing and might stay in the city overnight. We parked in the upper lot at the Long Island Maritime Center and walked down past the Sea Lion Fountain. Jesse was bouncing with excitement, clutching the map brochure like it was treasure. I needed the break too. Not from Jesse, never from him, but from the other thing. The lie sitting in our bedroom pretending to be my wife. Inside, we wandered through the jellyfish hall, then the open reef tanks where volunteers let kids touch sea stars and horseshoe crabs. Jesse was in heaven. I could almost forget what I knew. Almost. An hour in, we hit the snack bar. Jesse wanted a soft pretzel. I was paying when he tugged on my sleeve. Dad, I looked down. He was pale, eyes wide, not scared exactly, more like frozen. Can we go that way? He pointed to the corridor near the employee exit, narrow, lined with staff-only signage and backlit shark photos. I want to look at the big one again. I started to say no, but something in his voice stopped me. We turned down the corridor. He was walking fast now, almost too fast. His little sneakers squeaked against the tile. I caught up just as he pressed himself flat against the wall beside a fake coral display. I crouched beside him. "Jesse," I whispered. "What is it?" He didn't answer. Just pointed. I followed his gaze. 20 feet down, in front of the emergency exit, was Marla. Hair curled, wearing a cream coat she didn't leave with. And next to her, standing close, too close, was Lionel Cross. My college roommate. My oldest friend. My firm's legal advisor. And her lover. They were laughing. She touched his chest like it was nothing. He leaned in. She kissed him. It wasn't the kiss that broke me. It was how relaxed they looked. Like this wasn't the first time. Like it was normal. Jesse whispered, "Why is Mom holding Lionel like she holds you?" I closed my eyes. My throat tightened, but I couldn't afford a reaction. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice level. "Let's go back to the sharks. You still want to walk through that megalodon jaw?" He nodded, but he looked confused. Hurt. He didn't know what he'd seen. Not fully. But he knew it was wrong. We walked back toward the crowd. I didn't look back. That night, while Jesse brushed his teeth, I stared at the ceiling above his bunk bed. He didn't mention what he saw, but I knew it had launched itself somewhere deep. Like a splinter under the skin. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It wasn't just lies and spreadsheets. Now Jesse was involved. Now it was personal in a way it hadn't been before. And I swore, quietly, in the dark of his room, I would not let him be the one to carry this. I would. Monday morning, I was back in my office, corner suite, high-rise, quiet as a tomb. The aquarium was behind us, but the image of Jesse's face when he saw his mother kiss another man still sat in my mind like a watermark. This wasn't about infidelity anymore. This was infiltration. Sabotage? I called Gwen first. She was my senior analyst, ex-SEC, built like a long-distance runner and twice as fast when it came to sniffing out fraud. I didn't tell her the whole story. Just said we needed to look into something internal, a routine sweep for risk mitigation tied to client security. Gwen didn't blink. Are we targeting internal access logs? Yes. Everyone with bridge access to financial models, live or archived. Focus on Lionel Cross. See what his legal clearance covers. And dig into Marla's gallery accounts, anything outside normal acquisitions and show costs. There was a pause. Understood, she said, and she was already typing before she hung up. Next, I took the elevator to the 43rd floor and knocked on a door with a name I hadn't said aloud in years. Harold Wick. Retired litigator. Minter. The guy who taught me how to weaponize a balance sheet. He opened the door in a cardigan, sipping black coffee, and raised an eyebrow. Well, if it isn't my favorite hammer looking for a nail. I didn't smile. I need to talk hypotheticals. That got his attention. 10 minutes later, we sat in his private conference room, just the two of us, and I laid it out, not as Caleb the husband, but as Caleb the strategist. Harold nodded along. Let me guess. She's not just sleeping with your old friend. She's using him to move money, manipulate clients, and possibly breach confidentiality. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He leaned back, laced his fingers together. First move, do not engage emotionally. You'll lose control. Let her keep thinking she's 3 moves ahead. Meanwhile, you build documentation. You make it airtight. Anything you drop in court needs to be a neutron bomb, not a firecracker. I'm working on it. Good. And Lionel. Gwen's already digging. If he accessed any live model data from our side and passed it to Marla's camp, that's theft. Especially if he used privileged systems or tools tied to her firm. Harold's eyes narrowed. If he used confidential firm infrastructure and passed it to an outside party with intent to damage your business, you don't just have grounds for civil recourse. You've got the early makings of federal securities fraud, depending on which clients were touched. I nodded slowly. I've already found internal overlaps. Marla's been selling exclusive art holdings to people we manage wealth for. Some of the pricing doesn't match market history. He looked impressed. Then you go all the way. By the time I got back to my office, Gwen had already sent a preliminary report. It was worse than I thought. Lionel had logged into our secured financial model vault 3 times in the last 90 days using clearance he never should have had. Each time, he accessed valuations on high-net-worth client portfolios tied to offshore holdings, art-backed assets. On Marla's end, those same clients were listed in a private collector list she had drafted for her most recent European showings. Lionel had even signed off on shipping manifests for artwork appraisals that were never formally invoiced. He'd weaponized pillow talk. Used me to get inside the firm. Used Marla's gallery to court my clients behind my back. This wasn't a love affair. This was a hostile move. And they were using my home, my trust, and my silence as cover. I sat alone in my office, staring out at the skyline, and felt something settle inside me, not anger, not grief. Alignment. They had taken their shot. Now it was my turn. Thursday evening, Marla set the dining table like it was Christmas Eve. Linen napkins. Crystal glasses. Music humming soft jazz from her gallery playlist. She even lit tapered candles, which she hadn't done in years. Dana's flying in from D.C., she said, adjusting silverware with her usual curated grace. Lionel's picking her up. I thought it'd be nice to do a proper meal. Just us. Family. I nodded. Sounds perfect. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and went back to fluffing seat cushions. Jesse was quiet all day. He hadn't mentioned what he saw at the aquarium. But kids that age, they carry silence like weight. He set the table without being asked, then disappeared into his room until dinner was ready. By 7, Lionel and Dana arrived. Lionel wore his usual tailored arrogance, sleek navy suit, Rolex ticking like a metronome. He greeted Marla with a warm hug that lasted just a little too long. Dana followed behind, warm but unreadable, in a dark green pantsuit and patent heels. She worked in corporate ethics compliance. The irony wasn't lost on me. Caleb, she said, giving me a brief handshake. Always a pleasure. You look sharp as ever, Dana. Been a long time. Marla brought out a wine she claimed had been aging for 6 years. We all took our seats. Jesse sat between me and the kitchen doorway, eyes down, fork untouched. The first half of dinner was all performative. Lionel talked about his firm. Dana shared anecdotes from a whistleblower case she'd just closed. Marla gushed about a collector in Milan who was absolutely floored by a sculpture she shipped from the Hamptons. I nodded politely, made small talk, pretended I didn't know. Then, halfway through dessert, I reached for a leather folder tucked under my chair and placed it beside my wine glass. Before we wrap, I said, calmly, I was hoping to get your opinion on something, Dana. Since you work in ethics. She blinked. Of course. I opened the folder. The room went quiet. Inside were printouts, financial statements, access logs, shipping invoices, internal emails. The first sheet was a side-by-side chart showing 3 instances where Lionel accessed my firm's confidential data and the corresponding dates Marla's gallery made high-ticket sales to my clients. Each entry was highlighted. What is this? Lionel asked, his voice still casual, but his eyes locked in. I flipped the next page. A timeline, showing how private account data was accessed by someone in legal advisory and funneled through an art dealer under the guise of exclusive acquisitions. Dana sat forward now, reading, scanning. Her face went still. These are our firm's audit tools, she said slowly. Lionel, is this? Let me explain, he began. I held up a hand. No need. I have the logs, the access keys, the timestamps. This one, I tapped a printed email, was from your account, Lionel. Forwarded to Marla's gallery address 3 days before she contacted one of my top clients with a private art offer. Dana looked like she'd been slapped. You used my compliance framework to run this? She asked, voice rising. Lionel went pale. Marla stood, pushing her chair back. Caleb, what the hell is this? Are you trying to humiliate us? No. I'm just finishing dinner. I nodded toward the hallway. 2 men stepped inside, private contractors, clean-cut, in navy blazers. I hired them 3 days ago. Mr. Cross, I said, you're being removed from the premises due to active corporate theft and breach of professional ethics. You'll be served tomorrow morning with formal notice. Lionel stood up, indignant. You can't. You already did, I said flatly. Dana pushed back from the table and stood slowly. You used my platform, Lionel. I vouch for you. Marla's mouth moved, but no words came. Jesse watched everything, still silent. But I caught the smallest glance he gave me as Lionel was escorted out. Not shock. Not confusion. Relief. As Marla stood frozen in the doorway, I collected the folder and left the rest of the wine untouched. Dinner was over. And so was the performance. She didn't knock. She didn't wait. I heard her heels clatter across the hardwood as she stormed in from the garage entrance. Caleb, she called out, voice already trembling. I stood at the kitchen sink, washing a glass. Jessie was upstairs. The house was dead quiet except for the faucet. She appeared in the doorway, still in the same dress from the night before. Makeup smeared just enough to give her away. "What did you do?" she asked, breathless. "You humiliated us. Lionel's been suspended. Dana's threatening legal review of every contract he's ever signed." I set the glass down, wiped my hands on a dish towel. "Correction," I said calmly. "You humiliated yourself. I just handed over the evidence." "Don't do that," she snapped. "Don't stand there with that cold voice like you're above all this. We've been married 12 years. You can't just throw everything away." "You did that," I said. "Somewhere between your first fake showing and your third unauthorized account transfer." She moved toward me, fast. Not aggressive, desperate. "Caleb, please. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I was lost. The gallery was struggling, and Lionel said. He said he could help. And then you started sleeping with him." She froze. For the first time since all this began, I saw it, the crack in her armor. Not the glossy, curated version of Marla. Just her, disheveled, cornered, scared. "I made a mistake." I shook my head. "You made a series of choices. Calculated ones. You lied to your husband. You used our marriage to gain access to private financial data. You built an entire scheme on the assumption that I'd be too focused on work to notice." Her voice broke. "I didn't mean for Jesse to get dragged into this." At his name, something inside me shifted. "He saw you," I said, keeping my voice even. "At the aquarium. With Lionel." Her mouth dropped slightly. "He what? Watched you kiss him. Asked me why you were holding him the way you hold me." She sank into one of the kitchen stools like her legs gave out. I walked to the stairwell and glanced upward. No sound from Jesse's room. "Good. Does he know?" she whispered. "No. And he won't. But that depends on how this ends." She looked up at me, mascara streaking now. "Caleb, don't take him from me." I stepped forward. "I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in protection. Jesse is my priority now. You'll vacate this house by morning. You'll stay at the loft downtown, and you'll not contact him directly." She started to speak. I cut her off. "If you try to fight custody, if you even think about dragging Jesse into court, I will bury you with documentation so deep you'll be lucky to keep your own gallery name." Tears fell now, thick and silent. I leaned in slightly. "You want sympathy? Jesse's the one you should ask, because he's the one who saw the truth." And I walked away, because after everything she had done, it was the silence in our son's eyes that mattered most. And I wasn't going to let her twist that too. 3 days later, I filed the suit. Civil, not criminal, at least for now. Strategic containment. The paperwork was clean, methodical, and loaded with supporting exhibits. Misuse of proprietary financial models, fraudulent sales practices, and breach of fiduciary duty. I named both Lionel and Marla as co-defendants. The judge approved the asset freeze within 48 hours. Their personal accounts? Locked. Gallery holdings tied to my client networks? Frozen. Lionel's condo, which he'd stupidly purchased under the same shell corporation Marla used for her off-the-books art drops, was now under court review. I didn't smile, but I didn't lose sleep either. That Monday, Dana Cross submitted her resignation from her ethics consultancy. I got an email from her that afternoon. Just 2 lines. "Thank you for protecting the credibility of what I built. You were right to act fast." D. Attached was a full report she had compiled outlining how Lionel had leveraged her systems. She made it clear she was severing all professional ties. It would help my case, but I suspected it was also her way of drawing a hard line between herself and her brother. By the end of the week, word had spread. Quietly, but effectively. 3 of my firm's top-tier clients, the kind who only move their portfolios once a decade, called my office to say how impressed they were with how I handled the breach. "We like knowing someone's paying attention," one of them said, "especially to the people closest to the fire." My team picked up 2 new accounts within 72 hours. The kind of accounts that don't ask questions, they just want results. I didn't gloat. I just stayed the course. Jesse and I started a new routine. I picked him up from school every day. We ate dinner together at the kitchen island. No screens, no gallery talk, no mention of his mother unless he brought it up. Which he didn't. Not directly. But one evening, after his therapy session, which I insisted he attend once a week, he sat on the floor in his room, building a model out of Lego bricks. He didn't look up when he said, You always said truth matters more than feelings. I'm okay, Dad. I nodded, even though my chest tightened. Good, I said. That's what matters. He looked at me then, eyes clear. Mom made a mess, didn't she? I didn't flinch. She did, I said. But we're gonna be okay. He nodded once, then went back to his Lego structure like the conversation had just been another brick to snap into place. Marla, for her part, didn't put up a fight. Her gallery lease was revoked after a quiet pressure campaign by the property owner, a client of mine. She took a job with a mid-tier auction house in Jersey City, the kind that sold discounted contemporary work and paid in commission only. She moved into a rental two-bedroom above a pizza shop. Lionel? Still under federal review. The SEC had requested digital access logs and internal memos tied to his firm's platform. I had supplied everything they asked for. The fallout had begun. But Jesse, he had survived the blast. And as far as I was concerned, that was the only legacy worth preserving. It was almost 6 months to the day. The leaves had started turning again in Westchester. Jesse was thriving better than I expected, honestly. He took to his new therapist, started drawing again, and was back to asking the kinds of questions that let me know his mind was still curious and unbroken. Then Marla showed up. I got the call from my assistant around noon. She's here. Says she doesn't have an appointment but won't leave. I could have sent security. I didn't. I told them to let her in. She walked into my office looking smaller somehow. Not physically, she still carried herself like someone born for gallery openings and benefit dinners. But her edges had softened. Hair pulled back into a plain bun. No makeup. A gray coat that didn't fit right at the shoulders. Caleb, she said. I closed the file I was reading and leaned back in my chair. Marla. She took the seat across from me like she had a right to it. Like this was a negotiation. I've been in therapy. Every week. I nodded. I know I have a lot to make up for. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to talk about Jesse. What about him? I'd like to see him. Just visit. Start small. Supervised, if that helps you feel more comfortable. I studied her. Her hands twisted in her lap. She wasn't lying. Not exactly. But she was performing. What changed? I asked. She hesitated. He's my son. I let the silence stretch. Finally, I opened the drawer beside me and pulled out a folder. Not legal documents. A school assignment. Jesse had to write a short essay last week, I said. Topic was, why I trust my grown-up. Want to know who he picked? I slid the paper across the table. Marla's eyes moved across the first few lines. Her jaw tensed. I trust my dad because he tells the truth even when it's hard. He doesn't leave when things go bad. He always picks me up. He's calm when I'm scared. He said we'd be okay, and we are. She blinked hard. Swallowed. You can't weaponize him, I said quietly. Not again. You made your choices, and now you live with them. Any attempt to contact Jesse without my legal approval will be met with action. Immediate, aggressive action. Marla sat frozen. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't let the tears fall this time. I miss him, she whispered. I know. I stood. That's why you're leaving now. And you're not coming back. She walked out without another word. That evening, I came home to find Jesse at the dining table, sketching something on graph paper. What's that? I asked. A business project? School thing. I'm modeling how to grow a company with profit metrics. I raised an eyebrow. You using real numbers? He grinned. Yours. I ruffled his hair and looked out the kitchen window. And for the first time since everything broke apart, I didn't see wreckage. I saw a legacy rebuilding itself right in front of me. The call came on a Tuesday. Late morning. I was in a meeting reviewing a multi-year audit when my cell buzzed with a number I hadn't saved, but recognized. Marla's sister. I stepped out and took the call in the hallway, already bracing for something unpleasant. Caleb, she said, her voice brittle. Yes. I didn't know who else to call. It's about Marla. The pause told me what I needed to know before she said it. She's gone. They found her in a motel in Newark last night. Sleeping pills. She left a note. I closed my eyes for a second. Not out of grief. Reflex, maybe. Sadness wasn't the right word. It was more like exhaustion folding itself into one more line of record. I'm sorry, she added, like it was a courtesy she didn't mean. What do you need from me? There's a few personal items. Letters. She wrote them to Jesse. Unsent. My jaw tightened. I also wanted to talk about reconnecting with him. He's my nephew. I'd like to be part of his life, if possible. No. There was a pause. I don't mean to overstep. I just thought, I said no. I repeated, voice flat. And if you attempt to contact him directly, I'll file for a protective order and enforce it. Her voice dropped. He's all she talked about in the end. She lost that right. You don't get to destroy something and then circle back because it haunts you. Another pause. Then she hung up. That night, I opened the box she'd sent by courier. Nothing dramatic. A few old postcards, a sketchbook Jesse had drawn in when he was 5, and 5 sealed letters addressed in her handwriting. One for each birthday she missed, starting from this year and going forward. I read one. It was all theater. A confession masquerading as poetry. Emotional sleight of hand. I never stopped loving you, followed by paragraphs of self-pity. Jesse would read it and feel pain before he understood a word of it. So I burned them. Every last one. I didn't do it out of cruelty. I did it because Jesse's healing wasn't going to come from someone who only loved him when it was too late. She left a small amount of money behind. About $12,000 from what I could tell. Most of it in an account she hadn't touched in months. I transferred it into Jesse's educational trust and made a note in my ledger. He'd never know where it came from. That was the point. He didn't ask questions that night. He worked quietly on his geometry homework while I grilled chicken on the back patio. Later, while he brushed his teeth, I stood outside and looked up at the sky. No relief. No closure. Just clarity. Marla had become a ghost before she died. Now she was just finally gone. And Jesse? Jesse was still standing. Still smiling. Still building his life brick by brick, unaware that I was doing the same for him. Behind a curtain. Always. The auditorium was packed. Folding chairs lined up in rows. Proud parents clutching phones and programs, murmuring praise and last names to one another like business cards. It was Jesse's 8th grade awards ceremony. He wore a navy blazer that was slightly too big, sleeves grazing his wrists. His hair was slicked back in a way that clearly took effort. He sat straight in the front row, calm, composed, more like a keynote speaker than a middle schooler. When they called his name, I didn't clap right away. I watched. Let the moment unfold. He walked across the stage and took the mic. No hesitation. No note cards. I want to thank my teachers and classmates, he began. But mostly, I want to talk about something my dad taught me. He says the truth always shows up, even when people try to bury it. And if you live by that, you won't always be popular, but you'll sleep at night. You could hear a pin drop. He went on. We live in a world where people hide things. Money, feelings, mistakes. But if you keep chasing honesty, not perfection, but honesty, you don't just protect yourself. You protect the people around you. That's what real responsibility is. Some parents shifted in their seats. A few glanced my way. They remembered the divorce. The headlines. The whispers about Caleb Morgan's wife. The scandal. And worse, the silence I kept when it all exploded. They used to say I was cold. Now they listened to my son speak and didn't say anything at all. When he finished, the whole room clapped. A few teachers stood. He smiled, just a little, then walked off stage like he'd been doing this his whole life. Afterward, we lingered in the hallway while other families took photos. Gwen was waiting near the back wall, holding a small box with a silver plaque inside. She handed it to Jesse. It read, Future Advisor. For courage, clarity, and character. Jesse's eyes widened. This is for me. Gwen nodded. We don't hand those out lightly. He turned it over in his hands, speechless. That night, we sat on the balcony at home, dinner plates cleared, city lights blinking in the distance. Jesse rested the plaque beside him and looked out over the neighborhood. Can I ask you something? He said. Of course. He didn't look at me when he spoke. What do you think made Mom like that? I mean, how does someone ruin everything and not stop? I didn't answer right away. He wasn't asking out of pain. He wasn't chasing a wound. It was analysis, quiet, methodical. The same way I looked at spreadsheets when something didn't balance. She believed shortcuts were smarter than patience, I said finally. She thought charm could replace trust. And she forgot the one rule I've tried to teach you. He looked over. Which one? Everything adds up eventually. Even the lies. He nodded like that made perfect sense. And maybe, to him, it did. I studied him for a moment. His posture. His stillness. The way he turned a glass of water slowly in his hands like he was thinking 5 moves ahead. He had my eyes. My brain. But more than that, he had clarity. The kind people spend decades chasing and still never find. That was the legacy I gave him. Not wealth. Not revenge. Precision. Discipline. The ability to spot the crack in the foundation before the whole thing crumbled. He would never repeat what broke us. And I'd made damn sure of it.